Hello, and welcome to Friendship, Wellness, and Wisdom with your hosts, Heather and Rachel.
Together, we're here to talk about all things self-care, from fitness to mindfulness and everything in between.
Whether it's yoga, Tai Chi, Pilates, or practices like tapping and meditation, we're here to help you discover new ways to care for yourself.
We'll also share tips on positive self-talk, finding time for self-care, and creating routines that stick.
We're here to provide you with plenty of tips, tricks, and unsolicited life advice.
Remember to like, subscribe, and hit the bell for notifications. Join our community, and together we can explore the path to wellness. Hi, and welcome back to Friendship, Wellness, and Wisdom podcast, where we dive deep into topics that matter, from emotional wellness to personal growth and beyond. I'm your host, Rachel, and as always, I'm joined by my co-host, Heather. Today, we're tackling something that is very prominent in our society right now, navigating the overwhelming amount of negativity we encounter in the media and online. All right, so we're going to talk about how do we shift our focus from the chaos to solutions, and what does it look like to rise above the noise? Heather's written a really insightful blog on this topic, and we're going to dive into that. So we're going to get started, and we're just going to kind of pull the blog apart and look for all the great little tips and tidbits that we can use in our daily lives to kind of rise above all the craziness, the noise, the chaos, and the overwhelming negativity. Hi, Heather.
Hi, I'm super excited about this topic. It's such an important conversation piece, especially now with all the negativity coming at us, right?
Right, yeah.
It's just overwhelming. We're in an election year. We got a lot of different things coming at us. We have just a bunch of things in society that are happening. We have some natural disasters that are going on. And so it is a lot, and it's overwhelming. So we're going to get into it.
Yes, there really is. There's so much coming at us, and it tends to get really crazy and heated, when there is so much going on, because everyone has their own opinions.
Yes.
And I think I'm going to just, before we even get into it, I'm going to throw this out. People are scared. They're afraid that things are going to turn out in a way that they can't control. And I think that's where really most of the negativity stems from, is just the fear of the unknown, the fear of what's going to happen. And it really just puts people in a negative space. So, All right. So in your blog, you talk about the news cycle and how it thrives on negativity. Why do you think our brains are so drawn to the negative headlines?
So it's about, our survival instinct, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so our brains are wired to pay attention to threats, right? That's what our brain's there for. It's to help keep us safe. And so the survival of 1,000 years ago is still prominent in the brain. The world today, and the media and social media and all the things coming at you, is really just giving you that fear factor, right? That threat. And here's the natural disaster, and here's what's going to happen if this person gets voted in, and here's what this, and here's that. And so our brain is drawn to that because it's like, oh my God, it's a threat. I better perk up and pay attention.
Yeah.
As
opposed to any of the good things that are going on, which we tend to kind of gloss over, because our brains are really focused on more of the negative stuff to keep us safe. And it's like, then you forget about that, the happy little conversation you had 5 minutes ago, because that's not prominent. That's not causing you danger. So we're going to shift right over to all the chaos.
So, and when you think about all this stuff coming at you, it's exhausting, right? It's overwhelming. It impacts our emotional health. And so that's why I focused on this blog, because we really have to get back into not being driven by fear and threats in our mind.
Absolutely. Yeah. So you mentioned the concept of a feedback loop in our social media and search habits, right? So can you explain how that works and how it affects what we're going to see when we go online?
Sure. So absolutely, the internet is designed to give you more of what you're engaged in, right? So if you are constantly engaged in, watching the news and watching the natural disaster, watching the polls, watching the people talking about, future events or, what it all looks like. Your algorithm of your social media is going to feed you more of that. Even if, say, you don't like a candidate and you constantly like things that are making fun of that candidate, it's
Yeah.
going to give you more of that candidate. Or if you see a victory story about something, somebody overcoming something, whatever they're overcoming, it's going to give you more of those stories, right? It's going to
Mhm.
give you more of the base of the story, whatever the tagline of that story is.
So what we need to do is go on and, make sure that we like and engage in all the videos that have, like, cute little puppies
Yes.
and kittens
Yes.
and people with their, like, babies
Yes.
and, like, kids in Halloween costumes and
Yeah.
all that fun stuff that you wanna see, or, like, all those heartwarming stories because, yeah, if you click on all those negative things, they're gonna keep coming back, and if you tend to like something that you see from a specific source, you're gonna get more of that, and what I think we really have to be careful with is, a lot some of these aren't even facts, like,
Right.
people are putting stuff out there that's just
Opinion.
fake, right?
Yeah.
It's
And
their
opinion.
opinion or, it's got some fact with a little bit of twist on it, so you have to be really careful because, what you're getting is, that's if you go on Facebook, like, that is not the news.
Yeah.
So, you
Yeah.
gotta be really careful with,
Well,
make
and
sure you're getting
even
your info from a trusted source.
even nowadays, the news isn't always the news,
Yeah, well, I
right?
again, you have
Yeah.
to make sure that you're going with a reliable news
Yeah.
provider.
Me and my husband talked about years ago, and maybe you remember this years ago, if a news outlet made a mistake,
Yeah,
they would have to come back on and give you a retraction and
absolutely.
correct it and apologize and everything
Mhm.
like that. I don't believe that's the ethical piece right now. I don't think that's where we're at right now. And
No.
so if you don't have a reliable news source doing that, fact checking and then reporting, oh, you know what, this was a mistake, this is the truth, or we found out this
Mhm.
from this story. If you don't have a news source that's giving you that, then you might want to look for a different news source.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
You know, election seasons are like just a hotbed of negativity. We've dealt with it our whole entire time with elections. I don't think in the past they've been allowed to slander each other the way they do now. And it's not just the presidential elections, it's
Yeah.
elections, right? It's a lot of things because you see it like even with like local stuff.
Mhm.
Oh, don't vote for this because,
I don't know,
you
I
know,
feel like it's always been that negative. I just don't think
yeah.
we paid as much when there's not a meme in your face, I feel like that makes a huge difference because, like, if you watch the TV commercials, like,
Hmm.
they definitely would be like, "This person did this, they voted for this, they did that.
Yeah.
Do you really want this person?" So that always happened before. I think now with the memes and all that
Uh-huh.
going on, I think that just makes it so much more prevalent. You're getting hit with it from so many directions.
So it's just a hotbed of negativity, especially because campaigns thrive on, the division. They want to divide us,
Absolutely.
right?
Yeah.
And so one thing I try to do is focus on solution based, right, conversation. So if a candidate or if something, whether it's like a mill levy or a bond or whatever, doesn't give me solution based information, then I already chalk it up to that's negative and that's not really helping the cause. It
Mhm.
really is just trying to divide us and scare us and drive us into different buckets. I think when you go on a solution based track, what are they bringing to the table that's going to solve a problem? And is the problem something that I believe in, something that I'm dealing with, and then moving forward in that manner,
Okay.
if that makes sense?
Absolutely does. I mean, and honestly, one of the things that I do is like, I avoid certain things. Like I don't get into certain conversations with certain people who
Absolutely.
I know that are gonna it because I know it's gonna be a heated conversation. I will not engage in like anything that I see coming up on social media because people just put their opinions out there. And I find it really funny because like some of what they're saying is so super negative and it's really offensive to other people. And
Mhm.
then they get upset when someone who is offended by that comes on and like defends their side of things, and then
Hmm.
you've got two people who like are otherwise friends and very civil to each other, who are now fighting over something that is just, it's just ridiculous.
And
It's not helping. You're not and you're not
right.
going to change someone else's mind. Like they have their mind made up.
Hmm.
So it's not like, to me, it's not worth the fight. I know what I think. I know what I believe in. I know what my values are. I'm not about to like, start a Facebook war because
Right. I also think that, to really get to the nitty gritty of all of it,
Mhm.
whatever all of it is, because there's a lot, we have to be able to have conversations that are not emotionally charged, right?
Yeah, and that is not so easy these
Oh,
days.
right.
I really remember people having, like, more, like, debatable like, debates,
Hmm.
like, conversations without getting really angry with each other. You
Hmm.
used to see more of that. I mean, and I do know, like, I remember one of the things, like, because I did go to school to be a hairdresser, and, when you were at work, they would say, like, the things that you just never talk about are,
Yeah.
like, politics,
Politics and religion.
religion, right? You stay away from that.
And the reality is, what was important to us in our 20s, what was important to us in our 30s, it wasn't important in our 40s and 50s.
Yeah,
And
so
so I think, though, the emotionally charged thing, people get emotionally charged because of fear,
yeah,
because
absolutely.
they believe there's a threat and they want you to understand there's a
Understand
threat.
what the threat is, yeah, and
Right,
that when you don't see it like they do, they're like,
right.
and there's 2 sides to that, and I feel like both sides that the sad part is like, guys, we're all supposed to really be working together here because it's one country, right?
Yes,
So, we wanna be able
absolutely.
to, like, find solutions, and at this point, I it's just not something um, that really seems to be happening, which is
Yeah.
that to me is what's scary.
And I go back to, really, if you are sitting down and having that conversation, what are the solutions? Okay, you
Absolutely.
and I don't see eye to eye, and we may never see eye to eye. So how can we make a solution to rise above this?
Right.
How do we make these solutions? So yeah, neither one of us might be okay with the outcome of this, and neither one of us might be good with it. But how do we rise above and create a solution that we can live and
Mhm.
coincide and be respectful? That is
Well, I think that's
huge.
really what it is like being respectful of others because whatever solutions we come up with, I mean, if we're not the ones in charge of making the decisions,
Right,
it's not even like the solution so much as the solution is more of like how do we coexist, right?
right.
Without getting on each other and fighting with each other over our differences. It's
To
like,
me,
how do
that's
we
a
be
solution,
adults?
though.
Yeah, right. Right. But I'm just saying, so how do we be adults? How do we live
Right,
together? How do we get along?
right.
All right, we're talking about shifting focus from negativity to solutions, right? So, how can we begin to train our minds to look for the positive in every challenging situation?
So it starts with being intentional, right? It
Mhm.
starts with being intentional about what we engage with, right? What we get involved in. If we actively seek out positive stories, solution based content, or discussions that foster understanding, our mindset begins to shift. It's likely that it retrains our brain, and it's likely that your feed is going to be more apt to that. That's what you're going to mostly see. You always need to set boundaries. You always need to set
Absolutely.
limits, right? Limit your exposure to content streaming of negative. I mean, you're going to hit negative stuff. Negative things happen, but you can filter. You can put up boundaries for things that you personally engage in that
Absolutely.
really is out of Mother Nature's hands and is really a human element, right?
No,
And
absolutely. Yeah.
and so I think it's really important that we realize that the more we can, so it's like going on a diet. When you consume bad things, right? Bad
Yeah.
things happen in your brain. And when you consume good things happen in your brain. And so if you're constantly consuming bad things, your brain's not going to be super positive and healthy.
No, absolutely. And sometimes it's just the source, like switching the source. And like I know if you want just straight up news with the facts and not like the negative spin and like
Hmm.
all the pageantry of the whole thing. Like you can literally go on and listen to NPR and they will give you the rundown of the things that happened and they don't color it one way or the other.
Hmm.
This happened, this happened, this happened. You know, and if they're going to have someone that they interview or whatever, the questions are a little bit more direct and like how like a direct effect and all of that and you get it in very bite size
Hmm.
pieces
Hmm.
and it's just not this overwhelming like tragic story. So
Right.
there are ways that you can look into the sources where you're getting this stuff and then yes, like small doses.
Right.
You don't need to if you spend all day watching the news, it's going to have an effect. So if you watch the news for 5 to 10 minutes, you get all the news stories and then move on with your day,
Yeah.
you're
I
going to have
think
a very
of
different kind of a day.
yeah, I think of the movie Signs with Joaquin Phoenix.
Yeah.
And he's like, I put the TV in the closet under the stairs because it was bad for the children. And then he is just sitting there watching the TV and he's just like, did you see what happened? Did you see what happened? You know what I mean? And he is just like so consumed. And I look at like what we're going through right now as that. People are like, oh, I don't want to poison everybody, but man, I'm not gonna move from this spot.
Yeah, and it's just like sometimes you just gotta turn it off, like,
Yeah, totally.
and that's really what it comes down to. Sometimes you just have to turn it off.
Sometimes that's the
Um,
healthiest.
yeah, so all right, we're gonna talk about emphasizing transparency and emotional intelligence in conversations. Well, why do you think that those are so important when trying to rise above the negativity?
Transparency and emotional intelligence allows us to have real, meaningful conversation without being ruled by emotion, right? Like I said in the beginning, without being emotionally charged. When
Mhm.
we approach situations with honesty and vulnerability, we actively listen, it shifts our dynamic. So you want to actively listen. You don't want to get emotionally charged. You want to use your emotional intelligence to help you manage how we react, how we respond, and stay in a place of clarity rather than moving into a place of frustration.
Okay.
And so I think emotional intelligence and not being emotionally charged is a huge piece of really trying to keep even keeled and really trying to get good information.
Absolutely. I think too, one good thing to mention about like active listening, when you're actively listening, you're listening to understand and you're not listening to respond.
Mhm.
The idea behind all of this is to literally understand where the other person is coming from and to understand their views and thoughts.
Yeah.
Now, you can think about that for a while and you may want to like instead of responding with what you think, you may want to further ask questions from that
Mhm.
point. And I think that's one of the really key things to understand about active listening. I just kind of wanted to add that in there because I
Well,
think a lot of us we don't always do that.
right. And I think when you're actively listening, you're
Hmm.
listening with empathy. If you can actively listen to somebody that is going through some of these things, right? These negative things from the negative media,
Hmm.
you can actively listen with empathy and understand that they're afraid.
Right.
You can understand that they don't understand. You can understand that, they feel the threat of whatever they're believing.
We're talking about finding positivity even in times of division. All right. So, what are some of the ways that we can create more constructive dialogue instead of feeding into all of the conflict?
Yeah. So, like we were just talking about, it's about approaching conversation with intention of understanding rather than winning, right? It's not a,
Yes. Not
this is
huge.
not who wins, right? This is not about who's on top. It's about our lives. It's about us as human beings being curious, open-minded, and trying to focus on shared values. Okay, so you believe this, and I believe this. Is there any common ground that we already have, and
Right.
how can we meet there and move from there? It doesn't mean that you have to agree with everything, but you can focus on common ground. if you and I don't agree on something, right?
Mhm.
And you agree uh, against this, and I agree for this, but we both agree that a human has human rights and they deserve basic human rights, we can start there.
Right.
And how do we get to these two places? So we just kind of like work it out from there. So find the common ground and then work out from
All right. So in your blog, you say the internet and the media reflect our intentions, right? So can you elaborate on how that mindset shift can change our daily experience?
there. Yeah. So it's all about perspective, right? When you approach the internet with the intention of finding positivity, solutions, and connection, you begin to see more of it in in your life, in your feed, in your whatever you're looking up. Also, it goes the other way, right? If you enter it and start searching negative and going down the rabbit hole of negativity, it's the same thing, right? So
Right.
instead of focusing on division, you see opportunities to collaborate, to grow when you focus on the positive, right? It's your
Mhm.
algorithm.
Absolutely. We talked about emotional intelligence a few times already here in this conversation. So I want to know, how can we start developing emotional intelligence in our interactions, both online and offline when we're like with
Eh,
people?
I like that. And ooh,
Who like with people instead of like,
yeah.
"Hey, what's up?
Um,
Yeah, how's your day going?" "Oh, mm, oh, really? Oh, okay."
emotional intelligence starts with self-awareness. We talk about self-awareness all the time. We talk about being present and aware, right? So that's where we start. We start
Mhm.
in the moment. We start with self-awareness. It's about understanding your own emotions and how they influence your reactions, right? So you have to
Okay.
really understand what your triggers are and why you're triggered and what are you fearful of and why are you feeling the way you're feeling. And then once you're aware, you can start predicting responses rather than reacting, right? You can start like
Mhm.
processing, you know, okay, I'm afraid of this because of this, or I heard this, so this triggered me here, or this reminded me of this, right? This allows you to approach situations with calm and clarity, whether it's an online conversation or face to face interaction. So, we talk about all the time, like practicing in the mirror, practicing things that make you uncomfortable, and things like that. We're all going to be in uncomfortable situations at one point in our life. We're all going to be stressed out. We're all going to have negativity. Things are going to happen that trigger us, lack of sleep, lack of exercise, not feeling well. And then to add to all of it, all the negativity that's in the news and the media and everything like that. Yeah, so being aware, being present, being empathetic, all the things that we talk about on a constant base, really.
Yeah, no, it's definitely key is that awareness and just kind of knowing like where your surroundings are, what you're feeling, what the other people might be feeling and know, read the room, know your audience. If it's not
Hmm.
someone that you normally engage in really heavy kind of conversations with, tread lightly.
Yeah.
Like, feel things out, actually, like actively listen, like get to
Hmm.
know who you're talking to and know what's, kind of safe and like common grounds type of
Hmm.
things to start having comfortable conversations as opposed
Absolutely.
to, just kind of um, bringing up like topical things that may actually kind of trigger some
Yeah.
intense, emotions or whatever. So, lastly, what advice would you give to someone who feels overwhelmed by the negativity in the world right now?
We talk about this too. Start small, right? Try not to cut off everything all at once and be like, that's it, I'm done. Like, I'm shutting myself, like, turning off the computer, no more TV, we're just shutting it down.
Go be a
Um,
recluse.
yeah, yeah, hermit. But focus on what you can control instead of what you can't control, right? Your mindset, your boundaries, how you choose to engage with the world. How you choose to engage with the world and show up is so important because, Rachel said read the room, but when you show up a certain way and when you present yourself a certain way, people already know not to talk to you about certain things,
Right. Yes.
right? And so remember that it's okay to step away, take care of yourself, right? And tell people, I'm not comfortable talking about this with you. Surround yourself with positive influences and content that inspires you to grow, inspires you to learn and look at things differently and things of that nature. The more you focus on solutions and kindness,
Right.
the more you'll see those things in your life.
And I think definitely too is like check your sources.
Yeah.
If you're getting triggered by certain things, you may want to, but you still want to be informed. You
Mhm.
may want to find a way that you get your information without a slant to it
Mhm.
one way or the other, right?
Right.
So you want the facts. You want to know what's going on and what's happening and what that could lead to without all the extra
Yeah,
emphasis
without any
on the craziness. Yeah.
biased or
Bias
drama.
exactly. All right. So that was just such a great conversation. It's always really kind of rough. I feel like when stuff that like this goes on because even close friends tend to have very different
Yeah.
ideas. And one person sees things or comments something online, and it
Mhm.
can really lead to a whole things like people start unfriending each other and not wanting to talk, or and some of it turns into like some good natured ribbing or whatever. But
Yeah.
it's really just I think it's super important to like be respectful of what other people's beliefs are, and
Yeah.
again like being compassionate, actively listening, all of that great stuff. I really love talking about this kind of thing because it's always been something I feel like I've had an issue with. I never really understood, like, if people asked me a question, I would answer them.
Oh, yeah.
And it was just one of those things. And as I got older, I was like, okay, I'm not always the most tactful at that. Like, you asked me a question, I gave you my answer. Like, you asked how I felt about it, I told you.
Mhm.
And that's not always, the best way to deal with things. And um, I see it one way, but then that may cause someone else to react.
Mhm.
And that's, something I had to learn how to do.
Yeah, totally.
And, it's kind of nice to have these reminders and to talk about these things and to see the effect that it has. Like, one of the great things to do about this, and I'm going really off script now, is to
You're
really
good.
just practice,
Yeah.
right? So you practice when it's something that you want to work on, practice with people that you're already comfortable talking
Mhm.
to. Talk to a friend, and instead of waiting to just tell them all of your stuff, ask them about them,
Yeah.
actively listen, and instead of responding to what they're saying and giving them your next story, ask them another question.
Yeah.
Like, really start to break things down that way, and you'd be amazed, like, at how much more you can really learn from the other person that you're talking to, and then you can take that onto the next conversation and the next relationship and learn how to do that with more and more people, which I think is, like, a great thing to do.
I also want to say one more thing.
Okay.
And and this is the other thing that a lot of people struggle with, and it is trust your gut. When you're watching things that possibly aren't true or things that are a little swayed, what is your gut telling you? What is
Mhm.
your common sense telling you? What is the thing really telling you? Trust in the real human connection and the gut, right? And
Yeah.
what you've lived through already.
I think that's some really great advice. So I hope this kind of helps to open up the
Yeah.
conversation and just to remember that what, you don't have to spend all your time locked into the news, engaged in everything that's going on, and all of that. Just if it's making you feel uncomfortable, step away, check your sources, check your
Hmm.
resources, and remember just to be kind and respectful to
Yeah.
everyone else because they have reasons for thinking what they think is, as much as you do. So I just want to thank you for being here and listening to us go on and on about, what we think about all these things. And I hope that you get something great out of it and
Yeah.
can be useful. And I just want to say thanks. We'll see you next time on Friendship, Wellness, and Wisdom, and stay well.
Yeah. Stay well. Bye.
Thanks for listening to Friendship, Wellness, and Wisdom. Don't forget to subscribe or follow us wherever you get your podcasts. And follow us on social media for more updates. See you next time.